Okay, I am going to try to make this as easy to understand as possible. I altered this. I don't know why they chose these colors. I tried to fix it a little bit so that I could help people understand clear versus carrier versus affected. Now, this is a Punnett square. This is an ideal situation. This is if a world was perfect situation, how a litter of 4 would come out. You've got your dog, your sire, and you've got your dam. Green is clear. Orange are carriers. Red are affected. Now, these are the acceptable genetic crossings. These are the litters that are accepted today. These. A reputable breeder will do these pairings here. A non-reputable breeder will do these pairings. Any time that an affected puppy is produced, it's ill-advisable, it's irresponsible. Now, again, oops litters happen. But if you have a carrier dog, you need to be careful of what that dog gets bred to, especially if you've got an affected dog. Now, some affected dogs, like dogs born with NCL, should never be bred. Carriers, you got to watch what you breed them to. Clears, you can breed to anything. You know, if you've got a dog that's a fantastic dog, say it's a master hunter, it's got multiple titles, it's worthy of being bred and keeping the genetics, but it's an ichthyosis affected dog. There is absolutely nothing wrong with coming over here, breeding it to a clear, and producing a litter of carriers. So, in a litter of 4, the outcome of breeding clear to clear, all the puppies will be clear. With a carrier to a clear breeding, you're going to get a 50-50 mix of clear to carriers. With an affected to a clear, you're going to get 100% carriers, right? So they're all orange, they're all carriers. Now, I will tell you, there's no such thing as a perfect world in a litter. So say you've got ichthyosis, say the sire is ichthyosis, the dam is clear. The entire litter could be born clear. The entire litter could be born with ichthyosis, carriers of ichthyosis. This one, they're all going to be carriers. But this one, there's wiggle room. So you may have a litter of 10 and every single one of them is a clear. You may have every single one of them as a carrier. You may have 3 clears and 7 carriers. You may have 1 clear and 9 carriers. It is another crapshoot situation. You do not know the genetic disposition until these puppies are born and you do the DNA testing as what they will be. So when, somebody's like, oh, I want a clear. Well, okay, so some people will not test the puppies. They just won't, because they're more concerned with the structure of the puppy. They're not going to give up a puppy that has good structure, good temperament to get a clear, right? Do not hold them in any bad light because they don't want to test their puppies. If you want a puppy out of this litter because you want the genetics and you want to breed this dog, then you need to help pay for that. Genetic testing is not cheap. And as you saw with my one litter, it was $112.50 per puppy. Now, I got some discounts because I got a volume discount, and then it was a beginning of the year discount when I tested that litter, so I got an even bigger discount. But you're looking at least $125 to test every single puppy. So if you're going to be a buyer and expect the breeder to test, don't be offended if the breeder says, well, if you want a puppy, then I'm going to require that you pay a deposit. Some breeders will say, well, if you want that, then you need to help pay the deposit. Some breeders require show prospects or performance prospects to only pay when they pick up the puppy and pay the full price. But if you're going to demand that they test the whole litter, be expected to pay the deposit to help pay for that testing. It's not cheap. You know, and then if there's no clears and you decide to back out, then that breeder tested for nothing because they didn't want to test the litter because they were okay with getting it. But anyway, back to this. Anybody who breeds in this category is irresponsible. Flat out irresponsible. If you've got DNA testing and you decided to breed a carrier to a carrier and produce affected puppies, that is on you because you had the ability to test and you chose not to. And I will stand by that. That is a personal opinion of mine. Now, 2 new tests that came out that we could never have foresaw were ichthyosis 2, that was new, and NCL. You know, within the last 10 years, those 2 tests have come out. So there's not to say that there aren't new tests and puppies being born affected for other things. So don't be too hard on a breeder when they find out that there's something else out there that they didn't know existed. But I'm saying the existing tests, if you produce one of these litters with the red and the orange, well, specifically the red, I don't care if you produce an orange or green, but if you produce any of these reds, shame on you, honestly. Because you knew better and you could have fixed that and you didn't. There's no reason to produce ichthyosis affected puppies. There's no reason to produce NCL affected puppies. That we have tests for those things for a reason. Also, do your due diligence as a breeder. Make sure that you go on to, OFA, when you send a clearance into OFA has to double check that the clearance is valid before they post it. They don't just go on your word. They check to make sure it's a valid clearance. They do this with they will ask UC Davis. That's one of the reasons I like UC Davis, because it comes straight from the company. So I don't have to ask them, hey, did you do this test on this dog? You don't have to second guess whether that clearance is valid or if it's been altered and it's a fake clearance. People that do fake clearances, I have words about those people. But another reason why I use UC Davis is because I don't have to worry about it. The clearances don't go from me to OFA. They go from UC Davis to OFA. Some of the other genetic testing companies don't do that. But this is basic, like I said, you can breed an affected to a clear and save your genetic material. You can. But you're going to end up with carriers. And sometimes breeding carriers out of your line takes multiple generations. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 generations. But you've got to do the work and you've got to keep testing until you get a clear. I've bred to carriers. I've bred to multiple ichthyosis carriers. I own ichthyosis carriers. I will continue to breed them. Why? Because the genetics outweigh them being carrier. Now, another point in this. Carriers and clears will never develop the disease. They just the carrier carries the ability to produce it if bred with a dog that carries another part of the genetic mutation. So, this dog will never produce the disease. This dog will this dog will never produce it. They won't get it. This dog could produce it if bred to a dog that has it as well. This dog will never show the disease. It can't show it because it doesn't have both genes to show it. This dog will not only show it, but they will be affected by the disease. So they carry it and they show it. They just carry it, but don't show it. They're clear. They'll never show it. They'll never get it. They'll never carry it. I hope that made some sense. Again, it's not hard if you break it down and if somebody explains it to you. If you guys have questions and you're unsure, just remember, clear to clear, all puppies will be clear. Clear to carrier, you're going to get some clears, you're going to get some carriers. You might get all clears, you might get all carriers, you might get a mismatch. Affected to clear, you're going to get carriers, 100%. Every single puppy in that litter will be a carrier, but they will never get the disease. And this is, for pet people just as much because they don't understand the genetics. And I think, as breeders, sometimes we forget that just because we've been doing this a long time doesn't mean that we don't need to explain things over and over again. So that's why I'm doing these videos. I'm hoping to help pet people out. I'm hoping to help other breeders out who don't understand it. I'm okay with breeding carriers. I'm okay with breeding clears. Affected, it depends on the disease. NCL, absolutely never. Never, ever, ever. And there is no reason for another litter to be born affected with NCL. Ichthyosis 2, we can breed with it and get away from it. Again, no reason that any litter should ever be born affected with any of the genetic diseases that we have available. Not to say there's not diseases that won't come, but they shouldn't ever be born affected if we have a genetic test. So, and sometimes labs are not infallible, guys. There was an affected litter of NCL puppies born because the lab screwed up. Whatever went wrong, they gave the wrong results. Puppies were born affected. That was on the lab because the dogs were tested. I can't fault a breeder when the lab screws up, but we're all human. We all make errors. Things happen. Life happens. But don't do it intentionally. And don't lie about it. That's another thing. Don't lie about it. If you did it intentionally, then own up to it. If you didn't do it intentionally, then say it was an oops. Didn't plan on this for happening. I mean, like I said, I have ichthyosis carriers in my house. If I had an oops litter, there's every possibility I could end up in this situation. There's every possibility because I have multiple ichthyosis carriers in my home that I could end up in this situation if I had an oops litter. And that's on me because that's, again, dog management. But I'm just saying, if you see a breeder end up in this situation and it was an oops litter, underage or whatever, it happens. But these right here should never happen. This one, that could be an oops litter, even in my own home. But I strive to get to here eventually. And that's what all breeders should strive for, is to get those all clears. We kept the genetic material, but we cleaned up the gene pool by getting rid of the carriers. Anyway, again, if you have questions, holler.